Dak Prescott underrated, why the MVP runner-up is 10th place in ESPN's QB ratings. Dallas Cowboys quarterback Dak Prescott ranked 10th in ESPN's list of top 10 quarterbacks. This list is a culmination of votes and picks by several league executives, coaches, and scouts. Although Prescott consistently failed to secure any significant NFL playoff games, is he truly the 10th best quarterback in the league? How Dak Prescott measures up to other quarterbacks. Dak Prescott compared to other QBs this offseason. Prescott had an amazing stint this past year. He threw for 4,516 yards, only to be outshined by Tua Tagovailoa, 4,624 yards, and Jared Goff, 4,575 yards. Prescott also only threw 9 interceptions, giving him fewer turnovers than every other quarterback on the list outside of C.J. Stroud for the Houston Texans and Lamar Jackson for the Baltimore Ravens. As far as completion, Prescott completed an incredible 69.5% of passes. Yet again, he was only beaten in completion by players who also did not make the top 10. It's also worth noting that Prescott had the highest completion rating in the league, coming out at 410 completions for the season. He ranked top of the league for touchdowns, where he managed to pull off 36 touchdowns this season. As far as stats and the regular season, Prescott deserves higher recognition than the bottom of the barrel of the top 10. In fact, he should be at least top 5, and here's why. Game day record against other QBs. Many commentators and fans will tell you that it's head-to-head matchups that get Prescott in the bottom half of the list. He fails to show up whenever there's another quarterback twice his capability. But is that true? During the regular season, the Cowboys lost 5 games against these 5 teams: Arizona Cardinals, San Francisco 49ers, Philadelphia Eagles, Buffalo Bills, and the Miami Dolphins. Out of those 5 losses, only one of those other quarterbacks made the top 10, Josh Allen of the Bills. If you look even closer, you'll realize the Cowboys beat 4 teams who had quarterbacks make the list. Prescott defeated the Jets, Chargers, Rams, and Lions, who all had quarterbacks in the top 10. How is it that these quarterbacks are ranked ahead of Dak? Dak Prescott and the playoffs. The other argument is that Prescott is garbage in the playoffs, which is true. He's a grade A choke. Yes, it isn't all his fault, but a lot of the blame can go onto his shoulders when he's pulled his team out of worse situations. When compared to other teams that made the playoffs, we do see that Prescott is lower on the list. Prescott's completion rate was 68.3%, slightly lower than his regular season, but giving him 6th place when compared to other QBs. His average yards per pass was significantly lower, getting him in his first 10th place ranking. In the playoffs, Prescott threw 3 touchdowns but with 2 interceptions, showing that he did indeed panic under pressure. His passer rating according to ESPN also placed him at number 10. His playoff record does show room for improvement. But he isn't much worse than other quarterbacks who were rated ahead of him. The ratings are overhyped. These ratings list the top 10 best quarterbacks in the league in 2024. Unjustly, they take into account previous seasons of work. This is why guys like Joe Burrow and Aaron Rodgers, who fought off injuries throughout the season, were rated high. They have the track record to say that if they are healthy, they'll have a good season. ESPN rates based on years of performance, not just the prior year. It's why players like Jordan Love of Green Bay and Brock Purdy of the 49ers failed to make the list even though they had spectacular seasons, especially in the playoffs. However, if you're looking at the ratings to tell you which teams will make it to the Super Bowl this season, don't hold your breath. Because they aren't based on the most recent season, they're slightly skewed. When a quarterback that was runner-up for MVP gets 10th place, it's questionable at best. With preseason only weeks away, we'll see how well these rankings hold up to actual gameplay. Dallas Cowboys cheerleader Sophie Laufer details the extensive makeup routine she uses to achieve flawless glam for every performance and how to ensure it stays perfect all game long. Dallas Cowboy cheerleader Sophie Laufer has revealed exactly how she gets her perfect, full-face glam for practice and beyond, and some of the products she uses won't break the bank either. Laufer has been a part of the elite, 36-person cheer squad since 2022, a team that has been making headlines in recent weeks after the June premiere of their juicy new docuseries on Netflix, America's Sweethearts. The 7-episode show documents the behind-the-scenes of the audition process and their 2023 season, giving a deeper look at what it really takes to become a member of this iconic Texas team. The gripping series also revealed various secrets about the ins and outs of their everyday life, including the fact that cheerleaders do their own makeup for game days. And, for practice, they often wear a full face of glam, a skill that Laufer has totally mastered. Dallas Cowboy cheerleader Sophie Laufer has revealed exactly how she gets her perfect, full-face glam for practice and beyond. Dallas Cowboy cheerleader Sophie Laufer has revealed exactly how she gets her perfect, full-face glam for practice and beyond. The 7-episode Netflix show titled America's Sweethearts documents the behind-the-scenes of the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders' audition process and their 2023 season. The 7-episode Netflix show titled America's Sweethearts documents the behind-the-scenes of the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders' audition process and their 2023 season. Read more. Where are the cast of America's Sweethearts, Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders now? Article image. But even if you're not going to DCC practice like Laufer is, you can still get the look, as she walked viewers through her glam in an in-depth tutorial posted recently to her TikTok page. To kick off her flawless makeup routine, Laufer revealed that she uses the $14 ELF Halo Glow Liquid Filter Complexion Booster around her forehead, chin, and cheeks. She likes to use the drugstore product in place of a primer, the DCC star explained. I do not use a primer, I have kind of tried different ones, and I kind of feel like they don't do anything, she explained. Normally I'm doing my makeup in a rush, so if I feel like a step doesn't really help, then I'd rather not do it, Laufer furthered. Once the ELF Halo Glow was applied to her face, she blended it out with a makeup sponge, and then dabbed some of the $29 Makeup by Mario concealer under her eyes and forehead. I love this concealer, it's super creamy and has good coverage, but isn't too cakey, she said. I kind of just dab it in, and don't blend it in too much, because since I'm going to be doing foundation over this, it's okay if it's not super blended because the foundation will blend all of that in. The Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders do their own glam and hair for game days, as well as their practices. The Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders do their own glam and hair for game days, as well as their practices. Laufer shared that she uses the $69 Giorgio Armani Luminous Silk Foundation to achieve her flawless complexion, a favorite that she's been in her makeup bag for years. I love this foundation, and it's very nice if you're not very oily. It kind of gives you a little bit of a glowy finish, but I feel like it's very skin-like but also has good coverage, she shared. And, the foundation isn't just a hit with Laufer because her mom and sister use it, too. Moving on to contouring, the cheerleader pulled out the $40 Major Sculpt Creme Contour and Powder Bronzer Duo by Patrick Ta in the shade She Sculpted, and went in for the cream side to apply on her cheekbones with a big, fluffy brush. She also dabbed a bit on the side of her forehead, explaining that she always likes to use a big brush because it locks in the product and ensures that nothing slides off. Then, it was time to go back in with the Makeup by Mario concealer to highlight a few spots around the face, like the Cupid's bow and in between the eyebrows. Laufer also puts it all over her nose, since it has a tendency to get red, the cheerleader explained, while also spilling another DCC secret. Another tip, I'm also very light and delicate when I'm doing my creams because you can always add more, and I feel like layering light layers gives you a more natural and perfect finish than putting on a huge, thick, cakey layer, Laufer offered. Laufer raved about the cream and powder bronzing duo from Patrick Ta. Laufer is a big fan of the Armani Foundation, as are her mom and sister. Two of Laufer's favorite products included the $40 Major Sculpt Creme Contour and Powder Bronzer Duo by Patrick Ta in the shade She Sculpted and the $69 Giorgio Armani Luminous Silk Foundation. Laufer made sure to put a bit of bronzer on the side of her forehead, explaining that she always likes to use a big brush because it locks in the product and makes sure nothing slides off. Laufer made sure to put a bit of bronzer on the side of her forehead, explaining that she always likes to use a big brush because it locks in the product and makes sure nothing slides off. Another tip, I'm also very light and delicate when I'm doing my creams because you can always add more, she shared. Another tip, I'm also very light and delicate when I'm doing my creams because you can always add more, she shared. To finish off the eye area, she applied some of the $38 Huda Beauty Easy Bake Loose Baking and Setting Powder in the shade Pound Cake under her eyes with a powder puff. But Laufer doesn't like to waste product, so she takes any leftovers from the powder puff and blends it on the rest of her face to set the cream makeup. Before she puts on her shimmering eyeshadow, which she promised to show in a separate tutorial, she applies another layer of the setting powder, leaving it to bake in order to give her under-eye a lifted effect. This is also when I take a lot of powder, and if I have a blemish or red spot, I will pack extra powder in, Laufer said. It kind of makes you look crazy for a second, but I promise you this is my biggest trick with keeping blemishes covered up, because this powder will set and lock it in that way. Once her face has baked enough, she takes a bit of the $48 Charlotte Tilbury Airbrush Flawless Finish Setting Powder on a brush, which she uses to dust off the Huda Beauty powder. The next step was to add some extra color by applying a darker shade of the Charlotte Tilbury powder to her cheeks and face, and then contours with the powder side of her Patrick Ta palette. To contour the nose, she uses a tiny brush to apply some of Benefit Cosmetics' $36 Ho'olau bronzer under the tip and sides of her nose, and then tops it off with a bit of concealer on the tip and bridge. Finally, to get that signature pink wine nude DCC lip, she used a swipe of the $38 Charlotte Tilbury lipstick in the color Wedding Bells. Finally, to get that signature pink wine nude DCC lip, she used a swipe of the $38 Charlotte Tilbury lipstick in the color Wedding Bells. Laufer also added some extra color to her face by applying a darker shade of the Charlotte Tilbury powder to her cheeks and face. Laufer also added some extra color to her face by applying a darker shade of the Charlotte Tilbury powder to her cheeks and face. In between steps, too, I will go in with my fluffy powder brush and just blend everything together, she revealed. I feel like the more blended you are, the better and more natural and perfect your finish will look, the veteran cheerleader added. To pull the entire look together, she dabbed a bit of the $25 Anastasia Brow Wiz eyebrow pencil to her eyes, followed by a few swipes of the $35 Benefit Cosmetics highlighter in Cookie and $40 Dior blush in Rosy Glow on the apples of her cheeks. Finally, to get that signature pink wine nude DCC lip, she used the $24 Makeup Forever lip liner in the shade Wherever Walnut, another one of Cope's favorites, and a swipe of the $38 Charlotte Tilbury lipstick in Wedding Bells. And, as an extra step to make sure everything was looking flawless, she used a quick spritz of the $32 1/size waterproof setting spray, a recommendation that DCC makeup artist Madeline Cope recently shared with DailyMail.com. The team's makeup artist also divulged her own tips about how to achieve their flawless glam at home in a recent interview with DailyMail.com. It's definitely more of a glam look, but it's also finding that balance for your face, wearing a lash that accentuates but isn't too much for your eyes, she explained. Ezekiel Elliott stats, what the Dallas Cowboys hope for in 2024. The Dallas Cowboys picked up Ezekiel Elliott because of the problems they found in 2023. This past season, the Cowboys had two running backs, Tony Pollard and Rico Dowdle. However, during their playoff game against the Green Bay Packers, neither RB measured up to the challenge. Tony Pollard ran for an average of 3.7 yards per carry, for a total of 56 yards. His average was beaten by the team quarterback, Dak Prescott, who averaged 7.5 yards per carry for a total of 45 yards. It's a tough postseason when your quarterback averages more yards than your running back. So Dallas set out to fix their problems or at least come back to a past solution. But how well does Elliott compare to Pollard and Dowdle? Ezekiel Elliott's stats, hopes, and comparison. Pollard and Dowdle. Throughout the season, Tony Pollard, who was picked up by the Tennessee Titans in free agency, totaled 252 carries and 1,005 yards for 4 yards per carry. Pollard also only collected 6 touchdowns the entire regular season. It's not that great. He didn't make the top 10 for running backs based on stats. Dowdle's stats were significantly worse. He had 89 carries for 361 yards. Dowdle also scored only 2 touchdowns this past season. So yeah. The Cowboys need a renovation on offense. Does Elliott fill the shoes of Pollard or is he another average replacement? Running back Ezekiel Elliott. This past year, Elliott played for the New England Patriots, collecting 184 carries for a whopping 642 yards. Elliott averaged 3.5 yards per carry and made 3 touchdowns. Nothing impressive. He falls in between Dowdle and Pollard based on his previous season, being better than Dowdle but not quite Pollard's equal. However, the Cowboys aren't looking at his past season in their decision. They're looking at Elliot's 2022 season, where he averaged 3.8 yards per carry for an incredible 12 touchdowns, double what Pollard scored this recent season. The Cowboys are attributing Elliot's success to the synergy with his teammates that season. By placing him back on the roster, they're hoping for a repeat. Overall, Elliott has had an explosive time with Dallas. He managed to average 268 carries for roughly 1,180 yards. This still doesn't factor in the number of touchdowns Elliott made. When he played for the Cowboys, he averaged nearly 9 touchdowns every year. Maybe the Cowboys are hoping Elliott will have a better chance at matching his prior success. What Elliott has that Pollard lacks? The difference between Elliott and Pollard lies in that touchdown aspect. Pollard was only able to collect 6 touchdowns this past season, meaning that he couldn't truly capitalize and create plays. If you single out his statistics postseason, he did significantly worse. In his wild card playoff game, Pollard only had 15 carries, 56 yards, and 1 singular touchdown. In one of the biggest games of the season, he didn't even manage to yield 100 yards. If we compare Elliott, who averaged 9 touchdowns, there's a bit of a difference. Elliott also averaged better in the postseason, with 25.7 carries that created 98.2 yards. Elliott's best games were in his 2016 and 2018 postseason time. In 2016, Elliott rushed for 125 yards, averaging 5.7 yards per carry. While in 2018, he had even more dynamic stats, rushing for 184 yards and 2 touchdowns. The Cowboys had to remember these high statistical times in their decision to bring Elliott back into the fold. What Dallas needs from Ezekiel Elliott. Dallas is going to need 2 major things for Elliott to extend his 1-year contract. First, they're going to need Elliott to be consistent. When you see his 2016 to 2018 postseason stats, you believe there's hope for these kinds of years to return. The problem is that in later postseason matches, Elliott performed just as well as Pollard. In 2021, he rushed for 31 yards, averaging 2.6 carries. Right now, Dallas is focused on fixing the postseason, and are hoping Elliott will be that solution. Similarly, Dallas is also going to need Elliott to be a playmaker. The Cowboys are looking for offensive support for Prescott or for any future QB they bring in to fill the position. They're wanting someone who can stay composed when the field gets hot and the game gets intense. Ultimately, if Elliott can rise to that standard, then he can be an incredible running back. If not, well, there's always next season.